Imagine a vast, unforgiving desert. An empire, centuries old, stretched thin by a world at war. And out of the swirling sands, a ghost army emerges, not to fight pitched battles, but to bleed their enemy one cut at a time. This is the story of the Arab Revolt, a masterclass in guerrilla warfare that helped reshape the modern Middle East. At the heart of this rebellion were two extraordinary figures. On one side, Sharif Hussein bin Ali, the Emir of Mecca, a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, who dreamed of a unified, independent Arab nation free from Ottoman rule. On the other, a young, enigmatic British officer, T.E. Lawrence, who would become immortalized as Lawrence of Arabia. Together, they forged an unlikely alliance that would set the desert ablaze. The year is 1916. World War I is raging. The Ottoman Empire, allied with Germany and Austria-Hungary, is fighting the British and French. For the British, the Middle East is a critical front. They need a way to tie down Ottoman troops, to disrupt their supply lines, and to weaken their hold on the region. They found their answer in Sharif Hussein's ambition. Promises were made. Promises of gold, guns, and, most importantly, the promise of an independent Arab kingdom after the war. So the revolt began. But this wasn't going to be a conventional war. The Arab forces were a mix of Bedouin tribesmen and regular soldiers who had defected from the Ottoman army. They were fierce fighters, masters of the desert terrain. But they were vastly outnumbered and outgunned by the professional Ottoman military. A direct confrontation would be suicide. They needed a different strategy, a new way of fighting. This is where T.E. Lawrence's genius came into play. Lawrence wasn't a traditional military commander. He was an archaeologist, a writer, and a romantic who had fallen in love with the Arab world long before the war. He understood the people, the culture, and crucially, the landscape. He saw that the Ottomans' greatest strength was also their greatest weakness, the Hejaz Railway. This railway was the lifeline of the Ottoman forces in Arabia. Stretching over 800 miles from Damascus down to Medina, it was a single steel artery pumping soldiers, supplies, and ammunition to the Turkish garrisons deep in the desert. Cut this artery, Lawrence reasoned, and the Ottoman war machine would slowly bleed to death. It was a strategy of 1,000 cuts, designed to paralyze, not annihilate. So began one of the most legendary campaigns of sabotage in military history. Lawrence, alongside Arab leaders like Ww1 and Faisal, Sharif Hussein's son, led small, highly mobile raiding parties on camelback. They became phantoms of the desert. They would appear out of nowhere, strike with lightning speed, and vanish back into the sands before the enemy could even react. Their primary targets were the tracks, the bridges, and the trains themselves. They became experts in demolition. Lawrence, using his engineering knowledge, taught the Bedouins how to use explosives, which they affectionately nicknamed force powder. A typical raid was a masterpiece of stealth and precision. Scouts would identify a vulnerable section of the track, often in a remote, difficult-to-defend valley. Under the cover of darkness, the raiding party would move in. Men would work silently, planting charges beneath the steel rails. Sometimes they'd rig the explosives to a trigger, waiting for the telltale rumble of an approaching train. The tension must have been unbearable. Imagine lying in the dark, the ground vibrating, the sound of the locomotive growing louder and louder. Then, at the perfect moment, the detonator is pushed. The explosion would tear through the night, a flash of fire and a deafening roar. Rails would twist into mangled spaghetti. Wooden sleepers would splinter into 1,000 pieces. If they were lucky, they'd catch a train. Locomotives would derail, tipping over in a screech of metal, steam hissing into the cold desert air. Carriages filled with troops or precious supplies would concertina into a heap of wreckage. The goal was never to destroy the entire railway. That would be impossible. The goal was to disrupt it constantly. The Ottomans would send out repair crews who would painstakingly rebuild the track. But as soon as one section was fixed, Lawrence and his raiders would strike somewhere else, miles away. It was a relentless, draining cat-and-mouse game. The Turks had to guard every single mile of track, stretching their forces incredibly thin. It was a logistical nightmare for them. For every soldier fighting on the front lines, several more were needed just to patrol the railway. These attacks did more than just destroy infrastructure. They were a powerful form of psychological warfare. Ottoman soldiers in isolated garrisons would wait for supply trains that never arrived. Their morale plummeted as they ran low on food, water, and ammunition. They felt besieged, not by a great army, but by an invisible enemy that could strike at any time, from any direction. The desert itself seemed to have turned against them. One of the most famous exploits of this campaign was the capture of the port city of Aqaba in July 1917. Aqaba was a strategic prize, heavily defended from the sea. A naval assault would be costly, but its landward side, facing the vast Nefud desert, was considered impenetrable and was only lightly guarded. So Lawrence and Oda Abu Tai did the impossible. They led a force of several hundred tribesmen on a grueling 600-mile trek across the sun-scorched desert, a feat the Ottomans thought no army could survive. They appeared before Aqaba from the one direction no one expected, the east. The surprised and demoralized Ottoman garrison surrendered almost without a fight. The capture of Aqaba was a stunning victory. It gave the Arab Revolt its own seaport, allowing the British to supply them directly, and it opened a new front that directly threatened the Ottoman flank in Palestine. The railway sabotage and the capture of Aqaba were turning points. The Arab forces, now better supplied and brimming with confidence, grew bolder. They moved north, operating in concert with the main British army under General Allenby, which was advancing through Palestine. The Arab army acted as Allenby's right flank, harassing the retreating Ottomans, capturing towns and tying down thousands of enemy troops who could have been used to fight the British. In the final push of 1918, the Arab forces played a crucial role in the capture of Damascus. Their arrival in the city, ahead of the British, was a hugely symbolic moment. For a brief, shining moment, the dream of an independent Arab state, with its capital in one of the oldest cities in the world, seemed within reach. The guerrilla campaign led by Sharif Hussein and T.E. Lawrence was a spectacular military success. It demonstrated how a smaller, more agile force, using unconventional tactics and knowledge of the local terrain, could challenge a mighty empire. The sabotage of the Hejaz Railway didn't just win battles. It won the war in the desert by making it impossible for the Ottomans to sustain their forces. It remains a classic example of asymmetric warfare studied in military academies to this day. However, the political aftermath was complex and, for the Arabs, heartbreaking. The promises made in the heat of war were not fully kept. Secret agreements between the British and French carved up the Middle East into spheres of influence, betraying the vision of a unified Arab nation that had fueled the revolt. But the legacy of those desert raiders endures. They proved that a people determined to be free could challenge the might of an empire. And the image of T.E. Lawrence and his Bedouin warriors blowing up trains under the desert stars remains one of the most powerful and romantic chapters in the history of warfare. It's a story of rebellion, strategy, and the unquenchable desire for freedom. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into history, and let me know in the comments what historical event you'd like to see covered next. See you in the next one.